My name is Eva Jansen. I work as a Human Resources Officer in the United Nations Secretariat.
Hello, my name is Benjamin Saligna. I'm a Human Resources Officer.
I'm Raja Kartikeya Gundu, and I am a Political Affairs Officer in the United Nations Secretariat.
When we think of the UN, we need to go back in history a little bit. You need to imagine that we are in 1945 after the Second World War and millions of people suffered. So
after such destruction, the nations of the world came together in 1945, recognizing that the pain and suffering of one people should hereafter be regarded as suffering of all of humanity. And therefore, they embarked upon the founding of the United Nations with the ideal of creating peace and prosperity for all.
Thinking of the UN is about joining this community of people in the world to solve global challenges of our time.
I think we can say honestly that we would have jobs in any area you can imagine. So this reaches from the typical job which everybody would imagine for people with a background in political sciences or international affairs. But then we have fantastic job opportunities in areas that people have not heard about before, such as architecture, engineering, people with biology background, health. We have plumber posts here in headquarters. We even have makeup artists for the UN TV studio. We need people from backgrounds such as civil affairs, human rights, any other legal area, languages, teachers. So you see, I can go on, and it will not stop. So I think it's really, there is something for everybody.
We have 9 job networks in the UN Secretariat. We have 45 job families. So the entry points are multiple.
First and foremost, I would like to say that all jobs are posted on the internet. Once one researches on careers.un.org, one can find consultancies, internships, regular job openings on different levels for different backgrounds, job openings that last for a number of months, but also job openings that last for years. And then there are some special entry points, in particular for young people with less work experience. So apart from internships that last between 2 and 6 months, there are 2 programs. One is the Young Professionals Program, which is a global exam that happens once a year and is offered to nationals from and underrepresented countries. And then there's the JPO, the Junior Professionals Officer Program, that is offered by a number of countries. I think apart from that, what I would advise in particular young people to look at are consultancies.
I would say in the UN, we are looking for people who truly embody the values of the UN, which are professionalism, respect for diversity, and integrity. And I think this is really important, that through your career path or educational background, you really embody those values and you manage to show throughout the recruitment process that you have those values.
I would list first and foremost persistence, flexibility, being open to working in a multicultural environment, and affinity to languages. Eventually, it's always good to be open to new languages. And in the beginning, when you apply and you don't get a response right away, I think the most important skill is just not to give up and be persistent.
I'd recommend that it's important to have some prior work experience before joining the UN, before applying to join the UN, because it's the real world challenges that you would have faced in the course of your professional career, as well as the skills that you acquire in that process, can prove to be very valuable during your work as an international civil servant in the United Nations.
And I would say field experience particularly, because if you have already this experience in the field, it means even though you may perform your role in the headquarters, you will know exactly what your colleagues in the field will need from you. So I think this is really important to have.
I believe that languages are frankly windows to the world. So when we learn a language, we learn so much about a culture and about a people. And the United Nations has 6 official languages, and so it's highly recommended that when applying to the UN, you should speak at least 2 of these 6 official languages. That would be highly recommended.
The UN was always a dream of mine. I studied law in order to later on work in an international organization, and I was lucky enough to manage to have a career in the UN Secretariat. And I'm actually, after almost 20 years in the organization, I'm still happy and look forward to new challenges ahead.
Well, I did not always know that I was going to work for the UN. I did, after college, I did an MBA, and then I went to work in the private sector. I worked in the technology industry in India, and at that time a couple of things happened. First, in 2004, when the Asian tsunami struck and there was massive loss of lives, I was very moved by the images, and almost immediately after the tsunami, I volunteered and went to the Andaman Islands as a rescue volunteer. And I worked on the ground, hacking trails, finding survivors, getting relief supplies to them. The joy I felt in reaching people who had lost everything that they had saved all their lives in a span of seconds, and the joy I felt in being able to make that little difference in their lives, I carried it with me for a long time.
I decided to work for the UN, I think, when I was a student. I discovered what it was to live abroad, to live in a different country, and I felt so privileged to be in contact with people from different backgrounds, from different cultural backgrounds. I also like languages, so I also put an emphasis on learning new languages all the time. And finally, the staff of the UN is called International Public Servants, and I think the idea of serving people, maybe the people who mostly need us in the world, I think this is an idea that really drove my motivation to work for the UN. My educational background is not uncommon. I studied in France, and I went for what we call classe préparatoire in France, and then for a business school. I graduated from that business school, and after that, and after I learned several languages also through that business school and had the opportunity to study abroad, I decided that I needed to gain more international experience. So I went for a voluntary work in West Africa, in Senegal, for 2 years. And then I stayed 1 more year because I wanted to gain more experience as a consultant. So I stayed 1 more year for a 3rd year. And then I went to a smaller international organization in the southeast of France. And after that, I applied to the UN.
I believe my education in foreign languages was extremely key. I put in a lot of effort into learning languages that were quite different to my own. I grew up trilingual, speaking English, Hindi, and my mother tongue Telugu. But then I put in effort to learn French, Italian, and Farsi. I believe that this definitely shaped not just my worldview, but also helped me in connecting with people and in developing a sense of empathy, so that whenever I visited a country I was able to look at and understand the narratives that animated the society around me. And I believe this understanding was critical, was as much of an education, I would say, as my formal degrees. So I have two master's degrees, one an MBA and an MS in international relations. They were certainly useful.
I have studied law and what we call at home Arabistics, so it's some kind of Middle Eastern studies, with a goal actually to join an international organization and hopefully the United Nations. I speak English, French, and a little bit of Arabic. I grew up in the Middle East, so that helped. And work experience, first private sector, then non-governmental organization, for which I became the main representative to the United Nations, and then eventually I obtained a job in the Secretariat, and I've made my career since within this one organization. I would say go for an internship in the United Nations and choose the organization in whose mandate you believe most. Do not just do an internship because you want to get a foot in the door, but do an internship in order to gain more experience in the United Nations, to see whether this is actually a job you would like to do in the future, and to learn more about yourself, whether the area of expertise is the area in which you would like to work forever or eventually for a long, long time. I think an internship is a great learning experience and something that makes you fit for future work, no matter whether it's in the UN or in the private sector or other areas of the public sector.
Take the time to build your profile. If I can take an analogy on this, if you play video games and you play Super Mario, for example, you could rush to the finish line and finish everything in just a few seconds, and that would be applying to the UN just after, or while you're still a student, or just after you graduated. But if you take your time, and if you collect the coins all the way, and if you build your profile, and if you collect more features and attributes to your skills, then you have more chances of being at a better position in the UN. So take the time to build your profile, and I'm sure you'll find the right entry points.
And beyond your degrees, acquire skills. This includes languages, this includes public speaking skills, and this includes taking an active interest in the world around you. So I would say read newspapers, speak to people who have perhaps political and social views very different from your own. Try to understand what animates their thinking. Go on an exchange program, go on a study abroad. Do whatever you can in order to improve your ability to write better. And I must emphasize that your written and oral presentation skills are extremely important for a career in the United Nations, particularly because often as a UN civil servant, whenever you're writing, those who are reading it have a very different worldview or even a different background than your own. And therefore, you should be able to put yourself in their shoes in making your arguments. So acquiring the skills that enables you to empathize better with people who are very different from you, this is key to being a successful UN civil servant.